I don't know.
Say it with me. I don't know.
Good God, it is liberating. I am a towering mountain of ignorance. I don't know. We're taught to believe that everything has a reason. And so we observe the world, we see what happened, and then we define the thing that happened as the reason the thing happened. But I think a lot of the time we end up mixing up thinking something with knowing something. This is why it can be so impossible to talk about certain topics with certain people. They've tied those suppositions to themselves so tightly with knots of narrative and constructed reality and values that there's just no untying it. And maybe unsurprisingly, in those situations, the best course of action is just to be friends. Maybe even ask them about that thing that they've created, because to them, it's immensely valuable. The world as we perceive it, as we've built it inside of ourselves, is a lie that we tell to ourselves, not out of deception, but out of necessity. We have no other choice. We simply cannot understand the world as it is, and so we construct. But sometimes I just have to tell myself the thing that is definitely true, the truest thing I can say, which is that I don't know.
Never know.
This is the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast with Bob Pondillo and Cass Midgley.
It's all I do. It's all I've been doing for the last 5 years. It's been my life, such as it is.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 151 of the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast. I'm Cass Midgley. Today, I interview two students from Vanderbilt University, Lee and John Roso. We met through the Secular Student Alliance. Bob was out of town for this one, so I asked Mark Stephens to co-host with me. And since these college boys don't own a car, Mark was also their ride from Nashville to Murfreesboro. I don't have a big monologue this week because I've got a lot to share and I wanted to keep the length of the show to a reasonable time. In its place, I'm going to open with a 20-minute talk with Gayle Jordan, the Executive Director of Recovering from Religion, an online resource for people wrestling with their faith and wanting someone to talk to. They have a helpline and chat opportunities and a wealth of resources to point callers to. They help from a neutral position, not trying to influence callers toward any particular belief or unbelief, just to be active listeners. Followed by our talk with two Vanderbilt seniors who just graduated this last weekend, and whom I met through the Secular Student Alliance there on campus. John is a philosophy major and going on to get a master's in it. Stephen is a BioMed Engineering major. They are roommates, and we get to peer into the life of two millennials, both age 21, and their personal histories with Christianity and their journey out of it. And we discuss the collective consciousness of ants. We taped this conversation on April 15th, 2017. We interview people you don't know about a subject no one wants to talk about. We hope to encourage people in the process of deconstructing their faith and help curb the loneliness that accompanies it. We think the world is a better place when more people live by sight, not by faith. Please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Our show's available on most podcast platforms. Also, you can support us monetarily in two easy ways. You can pledge $1 per episode or more through Patreon. That's patreon.com/EA podcast. Or you can leave a lump sum donation through PayPal at our website, everyone'sagnostic.com. The smallest contribution is greatly appreciated. Our opening monologue is an excerpt from a YouTube by Hank Green titled Towering Mountain of Ignorance. The music behind it is Never Know by Jack Johnson. The segue music on this episode was created by the Barry Orchestra, found at barryorchestra.bandcamp.com. Thanks for listening, and be a yes-sayer to what is. Okay, for the third time on the show, ladies and gentlemen, Gayle Jordan. And I just love the fact that you're in Murfreesboro.
Isn't this awesome?
Now, do you know a guy named Casper Rigsby?
I do. I know Casper with the Atheist Republic.
Atheist Republic, right here in Murfreesboro.
I love him.
We got a lot going on in Murfreesboro.
No, we have a killer town.
A freethinker meetup group that's over 1,000 strong.
Right. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And we had a pub night Friday night. Awesome time.
This is some groundswell. This is some grassroots
Clearly.
stuff that is churning.
Yeah.
Because people are, my experience with the show, having been on the air 3 years this summer, is that people have kind of graduated out of the system. Like, they don't really need these stories anymore because they're healed. Right? So you'd think my numbers would be going down, but the numbers are exponentially going up.
Is it new people?
It's new people. That's my point.
People.
And the emails that I get on a daily basis are almost all left religion within the year.
Are they because of the political environment?
I'm sure. I mean, there's all kinds of impetus, but empathy? How do you say that? I think that's a biggie. Always a biggie is the treatment of the LGBT community. Like, people say,
wow.
These are not my
As
people.
a marker, right.
That's a big deal for people. I mean, for me, it was 9/11, but, that's not really...
That's remarkable.
That's not impacting people like it was. But these are people that are fresh out and really are lonely. And this is what recovering from religion, in some part,
it absolutely
addresses.
It absolutely is. And Recovering from Religion was founded in 2009, and we too are feeling that same thing. We're feeling that swell. We're feeling that, and I do think it is kind of a side effect of the political environment. I think that people are, oppressed people, you can only take so much oppression before you have something happens. You have to reach out. You have to get some help. And so we have folks coming into Recovering from Religion all the time. We forget, Cass, because we're farther along in our journey. But remember what that's like. Remember, and now, unlike when you and I deconverted, so to speak, or when we experienced our journey, there's so many resources, so many websites and books and podcasts, and that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. And Recovering from Religion stands in the breach there for folks who have the questions, and here in Tennessee, you and I, right here in this studio here in Middle Tennessee, I can't stress enough what that's like for other parts of the country. I'm going out of town tomorrow. I've got a kid in Spokane in law school, and I got a kid in Eugene, Oregon. I'm going to go see those places. They're beautiful little blue places to be. It's awesome.
Blue states.
Yes, but we forget what it's like to live surrounded by religious people.
We don't. You and I don't.
You and I don't, because we're faced with it all the time. But and you don't even have to be in a red state to have that experience, but to just be so saturated with that religious message, and to have that spark or voice or thought that, you know what, I have questions about that. I have thoughts about that. And so the hotline's been in existence for about 2 years. Last year we added the chat line, which is an internet-based chat, which not only did it give our folks another option to be able to talk to a trained agent about their questions, about their doubts, about their fears, but it opened it up internationally because it's internet-based. Our telephone system, our hotline is a U.S. phone-based system, but our internet program, our chat line, opened it up. And so we've had some language barriers, which is an awesome problem to have. And so, but we are seeing more and more and more folks wanting to come in and asking their questions. So the big news is Recovering from Religion, in our effort to try to be that thing, to be that entity that fields those questions and takes the person as they are with the questions that they have. Part of what our policy has been with the hotline is we have had to set boundaries. And so when you are a trained agent with Recovering from Religion, we don't do any self-disclosure. And that's hard, because a lot of what we want to do is say, oh, I know how you feel, and I've been there, and this is what worked for me. But those are boundaries that we've set. We have no self-disclosure, and we have no deconversion, because that's not what we're about.
You're not trying to deconvert them.
Deconverting folks, and we're protective of that piece of our boundary. We're very protective of it. So as we have worked with people, what we have found is this has been awesome for folks to be able to ask their questions in a non-judgmental way. Lots and lots of questions about hell, lots of questions about self-esteem, all the things that you and I know accompany doubting one's faith. But we have felt that there was a gap in, once they ask their questions, the next thing is, what do I do? How do I build a community? Yeah. Now we have our regional, local, geographic support groups, and that's awesome, and we're developing that program. But there are some isolated communities, and we can't serve everything with that. So we are excited to announce that we are expanding our hotline, chat line support group program And our new name is the Helpline.
Okay.
And so we have tried to develop recovering from religion through the eyes of the person who needs what we offer, so that when they come to us, if they have the questions, they can reach out to the hotline, they can reach out to the chat line, but we have added this awesome feature of this community, so that after we have a conversation with them, maybe they're a young adult, maybe they're married, maybe they're working about that, maybe they're clergy, whatever it is, we offer them the opportunity to come inside, so to speak, into our community. And once they're into the community, then they're able to join whatever community most appeals to them.
Yeah.
Maybe it's ex-Christian, maybe it's ex-Mormon, maybe it's ex-Muslim, maybe it's Jehovah's Witness, whatever community that they are experiencing. We call these religion-specific and experience-specific communities, and they're able to join that. And so they're able to ask their questions, and those folks are not under the same restrictions that we are as trained agents on being able to share their story. So it's an online community where they're able to share their story, share their questions, build some relationships, get some feedback, get some input. It's just, we are so excited about this launch to be able to fill in that last step on finding their place where they can find a community. Even if it is an online community, it's a place where they can hear other folks' stories and tell their own story and get some feedback.
Yeah, and that matters. I mean, I know we're critical of like how social media has kind of maybe even dampened true community because we just all stay in our houses, or we could all be in the same room.
What do we do here in the South?
What
do we do? You know, when you're a religious, when you're a person with questions and doubts, and you're in a religious community, where can you go? You are stuck with that. So you look at that, and instead of fighting that, you ride that wave. You say, all right, well, let's see if we can't use that. And so I love that we have these real-time support groups, and we're working on developing those support groups, but we can't have them everywhere. And so for those areas that we can't have them, this is the next best thing. This is a real live, real person, real experience community that we're offering.
So you're what do you call them, agents or
a trained agent or volunteers?
Volunteers. They're not going to give anecdotes about one time I did this, No, they're just going to listen.
Yes.
And they're going to point them.
We do a lot of reflective listening techniques. What I hear you saying isn't, that must be hard for you. And it's surprisingly not as plastic as it sounds right this second whenever I'm saying it. But it's about, we know the importance, you and I know the importance of talk therapy when you're struggling with something. And to get someone, whether they're on the phone or whether they're on the chat, where they're typing at their laptop, they're processing and they're processing. And there's sometimes for some of those folks, as you and I know, there's no place else to ask those questions. So as they ask the questions and you lead them through, and we have all kinds of, we call them listening skills and all kinds of reflective listening techniques that we're able to help and assist, we still have to stop short of saying, well, here's what I did, or here's what I experienced, or this is my background, or I understand how you feel, simply because we need to have those boundaries in place as agents. And we don't want, the thing that's so strong about when you begin to doubt religion, we don't want to lead you to the next thing. Come on into non-belief. Come on in, take the next step. We can provide resources. We can make suggestions, but we always want to stop short, because that's the thing that we're critical of religion about. Is that people have these beautiful, fat, juicy brains, and we want them to access that and figure it out, because
at their pace,
with their issues, but so that they do own it, so that they're not then a year later saying, I didn't believe this. I was taught this. I was led into this. So we have a very strict policy about that kind of thing, and yet we have noticed that's such a need for so many of our callers, is that real-time connection with someone who has experienced the same thing.
So what's the website?
So the website is recoveringfromreligion.org, and on the landing page, you've got all kinds of options. You can call the hotline. It's 1-844-I-DOUBT-IT. You can start a live chat right there. There's a little green bubble. You start your chat right there. You can schedule to have a call returned at a more convenient time for you, and you see that. You can visit our resources page. Our resources page has Everyone's Agnostic as a podcast. And we have a variety of books and podcasts and websites and blogs, any any kind of thing. And they're actually categorized by, these are resources for a believer. These are resources for a non-believer. These are resources for a family member who's questioning religion. We're trying to be as much help as we can. That's our peer support options. We also have professional support. If you need a secular therapist, and the Secular Therapy Project is a whole other podcast, because these are professionally vetted therapists who provide only evidence-based therapy. And you and I both know that's not always the case, especially in a religious area. And we have and some of those therapists even offer to do distance therapy. And so that's our professional option. So you can, and that's a program of Recovering from Religion, is the Secular Therapy Project.
Cool. So our listeners or me, what can I do to help get the word out?
Awesome. What a great question. So, of course, as you can imagine, it takes an army of volunteers. And I can't say enough about our volunteer. First of all, Recovering from Religion is volunteer from the president of the board to me, to all of the volunteers. So you have the confidence of knowing that we are entirely vested in our program. So it takes a lot of volunteers. It's our hope to have the hotline, the chat line, the helpline, all of that open all of the time, because now that we've become international, the time zones mean nothing.
Right.
So it takes an army of volunteers. We can always use
So you need volunteers.
Absolutely. So recoveringfromreligion.org, and you click on volunteer. Everything that starts the process. We vet our volunteers. This is not, we have an interview, we have references. It's just the nature of what we do, and some training. Of course, it always takes money to get everything happening. And as I said, as a volunteer organization, every dollar goes to maintaining the program. It doesn't go into the admin. It doesn't go into those things. And one of the things that we have done in expanding our hotline into our new helpline project, we've transferred the technical piece of it, so it frees up a little bit of our resources. And so that gives us the other side of that coin, which is now we have our resources freed up to be able to market this program, to put it in front of the eyes of the believing community. So many of us, the volunteers and people in the secular community, our Facebook feed, how many of those, he has risen indeed. That's the one day of the year when I know how many Christian friends I have left. They can't resist that call and response. But so many of us over time, we get defriended, from folks.
I have very few left.
Right, I do too. After 10 years, I have very few left. So we are hoping to take these resources and then market this new helpline to the folks who need that. So because of that, of course, we always need donations. We're a 501c3. We have a platinum rating on GuideStar, which is the ultimate rating. You cannot get a higher rating on GuideStar, which is the charity rating.
And there's a donate button.
There's a donate button, recoveringfromreligion.org. There's a donate button. We have this little kind of an insider program. We ask if you want to be a supporter of Recovering from Religion, if you can be a volunteer, and we ask for 4 hours a month, which is not much, $4 a month, which is not much, 4 retweets a month, and 4 recommendations a month. And that's a little package that we have kind of bundled up so that you can, the retweets are our retweets, repost, Facebook, social media. Anytime you can give us a shout out when we post a new blog, when we have a new awesome podcast, when we, whatever it is we're posting, if you can give us kind of a signal boost. And then the recommendation is the critical part. It's telling someone who needs to know that there's a 184, I doubt it, out there for them to be able to access when they need some help.
Such a needed thing, and I think as we started this conversation, I think there's a groundswell. I think it's going to go nowhere but up. There was a time when it was much more shameful or scary for you to come out atheist or to even express disbelief.
The help that you can receive when you go through your deconversion process. I was, when I went through mine, it was early internet days, and it was a struggle, and it was books in the library. And now I think, if you have questions, there's certainly, you've got the opportunity to get your questions, at least get a place to get them asked. And so Recovering from Religion stands in for that. But you're right, there are so many resources. And the process, I wonder what the process is like. You probably journaled when you were going through yours, or
I audio journaled, yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Into my
I tried to write some things, but in the beginning, you're just in such denial that I know that there's something wrong with my information. I know religion is true. I just know there's something wrong for my information, and then you go the next step, and the next step, and the next step, and I just wonder what it's like from the outside, what it's like now, because there are so many resources and places to go. So,
and in that, you were mentioning earlier that you're in a community where you don't feel like you can come out. But the closer that tightness, almost like the trash compactor on Star Wars. I mean, if it's right down to your own spouse or your mother and father, your siblings or your own children, or just you literally can feel I'm the only, I'm
so alone.
I'm alone. And then, what's wrong with me?
Right. Why
can't I believe like all my, peers believe? They're
such a normal feeling. There's so much about that deconversion process where you are so normal. Those are such normal feelings, whether it's the doubt, whether it's this doesn't seem right to me, this is anti-science, this whole piece, this sexuality thing feels so wrong. There's so much of that you go through thinking, is it me? Is it me? Is it me? And it's so human.
You're standing next to somebody in praise and worship and there's tears rolling down their face and you're trying your hardest to
get there,
to contact God, or they're speaking in tongues, or they're slain in the spirit, and you're like, I can't do any of it. And we're that type of critical thinker, or that type of person with integrity who's not willing to fake it till they make it or whatever. They, in this world, in this upside down Christian hegemonic world, they're the weirdos. And
don't you feel, I love that we have gotten so far, even in the 10 years that I have been deconverted. I love that we are claiming this, as you call it, the moral high ground. I love that we're saying it is not a moral system. So sometimes I think, this is kind of chasing a rabbit here for a minute, but sometimes I think we do Christians a disservice, because there are two tracks that you can discuss when you're talking about why we have deconverted. There's the evidence science track. The Bible is not verified. Everything in there is so anti-science. The flood and the boat and the animals and this and that and this and that.
The logic and the reason.
Right. And then you have the morality track, where if even every word of this was true, it's an immoral system. God's an immoral character. It's immoral behavior. It's immoral guidance. The whole idea of propitiation, the whole idea of someone else, all of it. Yeah. And so what happens sometimes I think when we talk to Christians is we weave and bob, because we're mad about both things.
Yeah.
It's both anti-science, and we can prove this is not true, or we can show you that evidence doesn't corroborate this story.
Yeah, please pull your head out of the sand.
Yes, but at the same time, even if it was all true, we don't like it because it's a bad system, and that gets muddled. And I think it does a disservice to believers, because it sounds like that we didn't get our pony. And so, we're going to ditch this whole thing. And I think we need to clarify that sometimes in our process. But I love the idea. I love this new moral high ground. This is what, this humanist piece, this piece of this is what, if what guides your life is the suffering of human beings and the joy of human beings, and you want to decrease their suffering and increase their joy, and that's your guiding principle. That's the flag we should be waving. Right. That's the position we should be taking.
And even if those guiding principles take you past Christianity, to the people that are looking on, they might see that as evil, but you're literally still following those same guiding principles.
And here's the thing. So I wrote a blog post about this years and years ago, about this whole Westboro Baptist Church. So people get outraged that Westboro Baptist Church, they've bastardized God's message and they're so wrong. And these are good Christian people who are saying this. They're protesting these funerals. And what my blog post was to say, you are having a humanist experience, because Westboro Baptist Church they have a Bible verse for every action they take, every sign, every protest, every position they take. They are more closely aligned with the book than you are. And what is happening to you is you see those people in the funeral,
and you see yourself.
Those families of that soldier or whatever they're protesting, and your heart is broken. And that is a humanist
Go with that.
experience. Oh my God. If I could just shout that, if I could get that tattooed somewhere and shout that somewhere, that's what humanism is.
Well, a few weeks back, we had Colleen Jasma.
Oh, we love her. She's our resources
She's a
curator.
volunteer for Recovering from Religion.
Awesome.
And she put it like this. Part of my departure from Christianity was I felt like I was getting out of integrity with myself. And I wanted
that
to,
just makes me melt into a puddle.
I just
on the
thought
floor.
we can stop taping right
Right?
now. You
Done.
just summed it up.
Absolutely.
So, recoveringfromreligion.org.
Mm-hmm.
People can volunteer, they can donate, contribute.
They can give us a shout out. They can give us a social media shout out, repost, retweets.
They can do this Fantastic Four thing.
Yes, it's Fantastic Four. One of the most important parts, the volunteering is important, the donating is important, the retweets are important, but it is so important to get this visibility in front of the folks who need that.
Yeah.
So that's our Fantastic Four. If you go to the landing page of recoveringfromreligion.org, and all those letters are spelled out, recoveringfromreligion.org, you have a vast array of choices on how can we help you? How can we help you?
Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
That's my talk with Gayle Jordan from recoveringfromreligion.org. Please feel free to call their helpline. That number is 1-8-I-DOUBT-IT. That's 1-844-368-2848. You can speak with a trained agent or chat with them or schedule a call at a time that's convenient for you. There are resources there at the website recoveringfromreligion.org. My admonition is don't stay in that alone feeling for too long. Talk to others who have been on similar journeys, who will not judge you no matter where you are in that journey. They will not try to make you an atheist. They will listen and give feedback, but the main thing is don't go it alone. And Recovering from Religion is there for you. Up next, Mark Stephens and I talk with John Roso and Stephen Lee, two Vanderbilt students I met through the Secular Student Alliance. These are great guys, this is a great talk, and I hope you benefit from these young geniuses and Mark and I chatting it up. Let's get into it. Well, today my guests are two students from Vanderbilt University that I've known for a couple of years through the Secular Student Alliance. And you guys are both seniors?
We are.
Yes.
So, do you say Roso?
Roso. Rose with an O.
John Roso?
Yes.
Stephen Lee.
Yep.
And then filling in for Bob today is Mark Stephens. Now, Mark Stephens was featured on episode 121
It's true.
of the Everyone's Agnostic podcast. So,
It's good to be back, and I hope I do Bob justice. I can't.
He's just
far
forget
too
about
nice.
that.
He's far too nice.
Well, forget about trying to be Bob. Just be Mark.
I will be. But I like Bob better, so.
Yeah. Mark's a police officer in Brentwood, Tennessee.
It is true.
So if you ever get pulled over by this handsome devil,
Drop my name. If it's not me.
if it's not you,
But if it's me, I'll
if
recognize
it is you, then say, "Oh, I listened to your episode and they're
and
done."
loved it. It was my favorite one.
Yeah, they're off with a warning.
There you go. I give lots of warnings anyway, so.
So there's a couple of things I'm interested in having you guys on, and I can talk about that. But you guys were interested in coming on.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
what's on your mind? Well, first of all, let's just start with you, Stephen. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself, and then kind of what would you like to accomplish today by being on the podcast?
Okay. So my name is Stephen Lee. I'm 21. I go to Vanderbilt, and I'm a bioengineering major. And I wanted to come on just because, Cass has given me a lot through my 4 years. In terms of SSA, it's given me a lot of guidance, given me a lot of support. It was important when I came here to find like-minded people.
So what do you plan to do with your degree or with your career? Or what's your first move?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting how few opportunities there are for an engineering bachelor, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. It took me a while. Well, I shouldn't say few. For me, I specialized a lot in molecular biology, which is kind of not typical for my major. So when I went applying for jobs, it was either molecular bio-heavy positions who said, why did you major in bioengineering throughout school instead of a more applicable major like cell biology or something like that? And then all of the engineering people said, you don't have enough experience in mechanics or electronics. Why do you want to be a part of our company? So it wound up happening. Yeah.
I just said, wow. I mean, you're rocking a hard place. So what does it look like to care about molecular biology? Where does that show up in like layman's terms? What would you be doing?
Yeah. So I don't know. Research kind of became a passion of mine after somewhat abandoning the idea.
With what end in mind?
So I'm into like synthetic biology, so like modifying genes to achieve a certain end.
Okay.
Which sounds kind of diabolical, but like in terms of the industry.
Frankenstein-y? Well, but curbing, say,
dementia.
Alzheimer's and dementia.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you mention memory loss and stuff like that, because that's actually what I'm going to wind up doing after school. So despite kind of losing that, being in between a rock and a hard place with my major and kind of fields of passion, I actually just took an intramural research training award with the NIH. So that's what I'm going to be doing afterwards, and I'm actually going to be researching memory loss and contributing factors to Alzheimer's and things like that.
Yeah. So. And we'll get to your religious background in a second. Let's move to John and say, John, introduce yourself and what made you want to come on the podcast.
Hello, I'm John Roso, and I'm a philosophy major at Vanderbilt.
Also a senior?
Also a senior, but I'm also pursuing my master's at Vanderbilt in philosophy, so I've been battling the undergrad and graduate level work. And sort of some things I wanted to talk about on the podcast is just sort of one of my pet philosophical projects right now is the internet and sort of the role that can play in building communities, as well as, I know many of the subjects on your podcast are like deconversion stories and things like that. And I think that that's a very sort of pivotal tool that a lot of people grasp onto and use that for forming different beliefs than what tradition passed down to them. So that's what I wanted. And especially with the podcast being a fundamentally internet medium, I can see it's kind of like talking about it, it's kind of meta, right?
Talking about it while doing it.
Right.
From within it.
Right.
Well, the community building aspect of this show is the crux. Because when we deconvert, by design or by nature, it is a lonely thing because for the first few months, you can't tell anybody.
Right.
Maybe even your own spouse.
Or the first 8 years.
Right? It could be, we've had people on that kept it a secret for decades. And, my wife and I were young and Christian, very Christian, and felt like it was the Lord's will that we get married, and so when you are intentionally marrying a Christian and you wouldn't, like, if you're a fundamentalist and pretty devoted, you're going to take these scriptures like Paul said, be ye not yoked with unbelievers. What does light have in common with darkness? So you don't even date non-Christians.
Right.
And then you marry one and he or she deconverts. That's scary for the relationship. And so you keep it to yourself or whatever. There's that. Then in the South, let's say that you're a plumber and you've got an ichthus fish on your truck, because you can get more business with Christians.
Right.
If people found out that you were an atheist as a plumber, you might not get any business in this hegemonic Christian environment.
And that's the really good thing about the internet with community building is you do have that layer of anonymity that people can slip into and they can try out, sort of different identities. They can sort of experiment and just commune with other people without necessarily having the strong in real life backlash that people would typically face, especially in the South.
Yeah.
So that's why what I find to be like, to use the buzzword, the critical potential for the internet and sort of these different causes, not only just the secular cause, but I think for other sort of activist issues, like for example, we can see in the recent protests for the Keystone Pipeline, a lot of the people came to those protests because of sort of social media and online interaction. So there's like the environmental activists, the LGBTQ plus sort of communities on the internet are especially helpful, where you can sort of come out on the internet and get advice from people about that, without necessarily having to do it in real life first.
Right.
So I think the internet's a very, very useful tool in that regard.
I know it's several years back, but I think the Arab Spring happened because of Twitter.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. There's been a lot of literature written about that, is that it's not necessarily what caused it, but it's what amplified it to the level that it has been, without sort of the interconnection between people, as well as the ability to communicate without having to actually know the person, face to face first, is what really allowed that to sort of spiral and sort of, continue that movement.
So, John, what's your religious background?
Well, I was raised in the early days as like Church of Christ, but then my mother got a little bit more liberalized, and so she started going to some more like liberal churches, and now she's going to a Christian church. So I guess sort of her charting would be very old school, no instruments, Church of Christ. If the Bible doesn't have it in there, you don't do it. That type of theology, and then sort of just this gradual progress to more liberal, sort of like College Baptist Church, that type of thing.
So fundamentalist Church of Christ believe that they're the only ones. Like
that's the old joke, yes.
That heavenly thing where we're like,
yes.
Shh, they think they're the only ones.
Yeah. Yes. That is the joke.
That's the joke. Baptized by full immersion, rather than sprinkling.
Baptized by full immersion.
And that's the moment of salvation.
Yes, that you have to be baptized in order to be saved. And they also do it a little bit differently than like the Catholics or sort of other people, is that generally you have to be of your age 13. You have to reach the age of reason before you can make that commitment.
Yeah.
And then the idea is before that you're going to be saved because you're not accountable. But after that you need to be baptized to get saved.
Right.
So
that's actually somewhat nobler than what my background is in that area, but we'll get to that.
Which is Catholic?
Which is Catholic.
Yeah.
I was raised Catholic, and you are just baptized, I believe, immediately.
So do you know if you were like sprinkled as a baby or like what?
Oh yeah. No, it happens as a baby, and you get anointed with some oil, I think. So it's just this whole kind of from the get-go you are fully kind of, this is your way of life now. Like it becomes
Well, I like to talk about the siblings situation because of just you're coming up alongside these peers, your siblings, and as far as age goes, and then everybody kind of takes a different direction. So how many siblings you got, John?
I have a twin brother who also goes to Vanderbilt, and he is still Christian.
Okay. And just the two of you?
Yes.
What about you?
Yeah, he's
Steven?
a case study. We'll hear more about that. I have two younger brothers. One of them is 2 years younger, and one of them is almost 4 years younger, I believe.
Okay.
Hey, John, is your twin identical?
No.
Okay.
He's a lot shorter, and he doesn't look at all like me. You might not even notice he's my twin if you.
I would have found that very interesting if you were.
That would be really interesting.
What do you call that? Fraternal?
Yes, fraternal. Yeah.
And he's still a believer. What about your two little brothers, Stephen?
How do you mean? Oh,
are they still believers?
I think so. It's not really something we talk about. I don't think it's as big kind of. I don't think it's as big a part of your identity as it might be here.
Right. You made reference to like being in the closet for 8 years. Was that personal? Was that autobiographical?
That's personal. Yeah. This might be the first time people in my immediate family would hear that, if they so choose.
If they heard this show.
Which I might let them. I don't know.
Yeah. Say, hey, I got interviewed on a podcast, and
check it out.
By the way, what you think. It's my coming out.
Exactly.
But growing up, you guys, was it the kind of thing where there's incense burning in the sanctuary or in the cathedral or whatever it is?
Yeah, something to those lines. I don't know, whatever.
Did you like when I've visited Catholic churches, they've got this podium basin full of holy water. And some people would reach over and touch it as they're walking in. Did you do that?
Yes.
And then maybe, do you touch yourself with it, or what do you do?
Yeah, you do. You make the sign of the cross.
Yeah.
That's kind of typical.
And then once you get to the aisle of the pew that you're going to get in,
you genuflect. Yeah.
Genuflect.
That's the word for that, by the way.
It's kind of a curtsy, almost like you kneel. You touch one knee to the floor.
I've never heard that term in my life.
Genuflect? Yeah. And then you go sit down.
It's an insider word, I guess.
And then these are the kind of pews that at some point in the service when everybody's going to get on their knees, they've got these cushions that kind of
I've seen those
mechanized to pull out and where everybody can kneel.
Yeah.
And so how's your relationship with your twin brother? He's still a believer. You're not. Do you guys bicker about it, or?
Occasionally, but I think we just sort of have decided to let each other go our own ways. Yeah. So it's not really that much of an issue, but it is, it's just like he leads Bible study on Thursdays when I'm writing a philosophy paper instead, right? So it's just like a different sort of life paths that we've chosen to take.
So does your mom know?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's completely cool with it. She's like, whatever her quote to the end of I came out to her by winning sort of like a $1,000 rewrite the 10 Commandments contest, the reading prize. So that's sort of how I came out to her, and she says, "Okay, John, that's fine. Just keep an open mind. That's the only thing. Now you don't believe.
That's exactly what you've done. Is kept an open mind.
Down the road though, you might come to it." So she's completely supportive, and she also knows with my job, it's not necessarily popular to be a theistic philosopher right now. So even for job reasons.
In fact, I'm curious as to how to raise money for the SSA or for even what might someday be my salary if I end up being the humanist chaplain on campus. And I've got a friend that works in finance or fundraising for the university. I said, hey man, I need an email list of all the alumni who are atheists. And he goes, well, we'll just start with the philosophy department.
Yes, exactly. And about that, actually, I was meeting at office hours for one of my professors, and he said that actually in one of our classes there were a lot of students who had strong theistic beliefs, and this came to be it was a metaphysics class. So basically talking about what we know sort of exists due to the nature of reality, right? Mm-hmm. And he said, well, these people, they come in with these strong religious beliefs, and then they just make a claim like Jesus is the Son of God, God is this, and then that's sort of their baseline, and then they can't really do any philosophy with that because you can't question that claim if that's your first presupposition, right?
Yeah.
So you can run into problems if you take too hardline a stance. Then you can sort of get blinded to sort of the bigger questions that need to be asked about it.
That's one way to put it. A fundamentalist trying to protect his children from philosophy would say they're not going to run into problems. They're tethered to that to save them from the wisdom of man.
Right. Sure.
And it's like a scaffold in a sense, right? Like once you do have that presupposition and build everything up on it, it's kind of like this different, even if it's similar knowledge, it's kind of like formed on a different kind of,
Well, and if new information comes in, it has to fit within that construct.
Right.
Exactly.
Or it won't make, either they'll reject it, which they have to, because there at some point there's going to be a cognitive dissonance, and they're going to have to pick sides. And if they're loyal to their faith, then they're just going to have to say, la, 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 la. Don't bother me with the facts. God works in mysterious ways. His wisdom is not mine. He's smarter than me, and I have to trust, that he's true and that he knows what he's talking about. And the wisdom of man is foolishness to God. It pleased God. The scriptures kind of paint a picture that God, in his infinite wisdom, set up a system that would filter out pride and arrogance in humanity. And so almost like a ride at a carnival, in order for you to get on this ride, you have to be so tall or whatever. Well, it's the opposite in the kingdom of God. You have to be so short, which means you have to get on your knees and crawl. And so if you're coming to God with all this smarty pants stuff, then the gospel is designed to be a stumbling block to the wise. It's designed to insult you. So the fact that you're insulted by the gospel or by the Bible is built in to filter out know-it-alls. That's the way I used to look at it.
Yeah. And knowledge is what brought evil into the world in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, it was bad from the get-go.
Yeah, there's this trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. So don't trust yourself. The heart is deceitfully wicked and beyond cure. We talk about these scriptures a lot on this show as far as how debasing the Bible is towards what it means to be human. Don't trust yourself. Trust God. Don't live by sight. Live by faith. And see, we say the opposite now that I'm an atheist. I think that humanity is better when we live by sight.
I was actually at a conference, and it was a beautifully written paper. But the central idea is if your theistic belief in God is the basis for all your the knowledge that you build off of that, and then you have the secular. I was actually telling you about this on the car ride up. But if you have the secular person who has a different sort of foundational belief, what we call basic belief, then what knowledge they generate after that is going to be radically different. And then the argument of the paper that I heard is they can't even communicate together, but based on that. But sort of to your previous point, I think that though the Bible has to say not lean on your own understanding. It has to say you have to have faith, right? Because that's the nature of faith. If you needed a reason for why God exists, or you needed a reason why the divination works, then you'd have faith in that reason and not the thing proper. Right? So I think that to a certain extent, this blind faith is built into sort of, inherently built into any sort of theological outlook, and I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. It's just the nature of the beast.
Well, and the biggest problem, I think, is religion starts with the answer, which is insane. So thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, these sheep herders who didn't know anything said, this is the way things are. Well, we've since learned that they were wrong in many, many, many different ways.
Yeah.
But they still stick to their guns.
Yeah.
Right.
And no other form of thought starts with the answer. It starts with questioning and research and wondering and debating and seeing how other people do it and looking for the best ways to do things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they eventually work towards the answer. Where religion starts with it, I mean, you're done.
Yeah.
There's no discussion to be had. We have the answer.
Yeah.
Well, that just killed the
It's just
conversation, and it kills thought, and it kills inquiry, and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even the answers we come up are subject to change because in the scientific method, at
Absolutely.
least, still.
And finding out you're wrong is as valuable as finding out you're right. Scientists love to disprove themselves.
Yeah, and I'm going back to something you said, John, as far as it's the nature of faith to not base it on reason. I mean, it's inherent, and I feel like when I meet somebody who's a theist, and maybe we get and they figure out I'm an atheist, or maybe even a former theist, there's this tension between, well, why don't you just believe? And I don't know how much you've gotten into this in philosophy or whatever, but I don't feel like it's a choice.
It's not at all.
It's not. That's one of the big points that's worth communicating, is it's not a choice.
If you could choose to believe in Christianity, you could choose to believe in Mormonism.
Exactly.
And no Christian can get themselves to believe in Mormonism. So why do they think we can just simply believe in Christianity?
Right. To have like sincere faith, you have to sort of be able to sort of dedicate yourself to that principle. You have to be able to live by it. And I don't think that necessarily that you're going to be able to do that for all different belief systems. So I don't think it's entirely a matter of choice. But I do think that if you have sort of a, preconditioned sort of, attunement towards such things, that then you could sort of make the leap. You might, you have to sort of make that jump to get into it. And that's sort of, at least maybe that's from my own background where, that was made sort of definite in sort of the rituals and things like that. So I think that there is sort of a point of choice, but I think that you can definitely be sort of preconditioned towards one or the other.
Of course.
And I don't think it would be possible just to say, go ahead, believe in this, right? I don't think that's how belief forming actually
At least,
works.
at least they're internally consistent with the whole choice thing when you talk to you talk to a faithful person about issues like homosexuality or transsexuality or something like that, where they say, just choose not to be gay. Like being gay was a choice for you, not ascribing to
it's similar. Yeah, it's very similar. And I can say, I don't know if you're referring to, I don't know, is Kierkegaard the one that said
that's
leap
what
of
I was
faith?
referring to, yes.
Oh boy.
But so if you are at that place where you are going to make that leap, even that place, like you said, the precondition, even that place, you didn't necessarily choose to get to that place.
Right.
So I understand that if I latched on to God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength from a young child. And I literally had a personal, intimate, deep, joyful friendship with God. Talked to him all the time. Felt his presence all the time. Called on him all the time. There was a disposition there that I feel like I needed it to be true. Early on, I needed for life to be meaningful and have at its core goodness and love and truth. And so I felt like a little Disney-esque as far as just butterflies and birds and streams and life is good. And there is a prime mover, a designer behind all this.
Because life is good for you.
Yeah.
There must be something.
In fact, I mentioned this on the show a couple of weeks ago, but I was in passing with a coworker. I said something about, well, I'm an atheist. And she said, well, I'm a Christian. And next phrase out of her mouth was, God's been good to me. And so there's this reciprocation, he's been loyal to me. I owe it to him,
But the people who think that God has been good to them, they don't. What they fail to realize is that they got a good hand. They were dealt a good hand.
Well, we know that now. But it feels providential, and what's built into that is how special you are. Because it's like
it's egotistical
that he
blessed me this much. There's people starving all over the world, but I have food every time I want it. It's fantastic.
I was actually just going to ask something similar. So, do you believe that your kind of type of faith is a privilege of the well taken care of? Because I think
absolutely.
Okay, this is a tough subject. I totally know where you're going, and I would say so. I would say so that it's like I think that there's a place of privilege that Christianity is only afforded to people who are affluent in some way. The statistics show otherwise.
Precisely the opposite.
Precisely the opposite.
Well, and both make sense to me. I can see the reason behind both.
And maybe that's why the world is predominantly theistic. It's because whether you're rich or poor, you end up calling on God.
Yeah.
Right.
Life is hard and random and chaotic.
When life is hard, you need something to explain why it's hard for you, right? And then when it's good, you need some explanation for why you're the one who gets all the good stuff, right? It's a human quest for meaning and finding a pattern, as you said before.
That's it. It's meaning making.
So as far as people in your community that you grew up with or grew up with in a similar community, do you think it's more disheartening for them to encounter a former theist or an atheist, like a consistent atheist?
Oh, yeah. The former, I would say.
Yeah. I figured as much. Well, like, do you think it makes them challenge themselves, or do you think...
I know it does, for sure. Because people in my own life hate the fact that I'm an atheist, because it does exactly that.
But do they hate it because you are, or because you formerly were a theist?
Because I was formerly... I shouldn't exist. If God and Jesus are real, and I've genuinely sought him, the Trinity, which I had, then I shouldn't exist. If God is real and his word is true, then I would have eventually found him. And the harder I looked and the more I thought and the harder I sought him, the less I saw. That shouldn't be.
So when you say
fact.
I shouldn't exist, you mean as an atheist?
As an atheist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to the discussion about choosing to believe.
Yeah.
I would say 100% of the people that you've interviewed didn't choose to be an atheist and fought it tooth and nail.
Oh, yeah.
That's why these deconversions take so long. It's because you don't want it. You want God to be true, and you seek him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And nobody's chosen atheism. If you're honest with yourself and you do the work, that's just where you end up, because that's where all the indicators are pointing.
You guys ever heard of Andre Gide?
I have not.
I don't think so.
Gide? I don't know. We have a friend of the show that for years has been giving us quotes, and I have this whole folder printed out, but they're stimulating, and I'm just going to throw this out. Christianity, above all, consoles. But there are naturally happy souls who do not need consolation. Consequently, Christianity begins by making such souls unhappy, for otherwise it would have no power over them, unquote.
That's why they make every aspect of being human wrong.
Yeah.
Because no matter how happy you are, you still have a sexual urge, you still are greedy, you have all these things about you that...
You've lied.
Yeah. So they just turn basic humanity into something evil.
I would maybe push back a little bit on Christianity being only consoling. I think that it can also give certain people a sense of power and empowerment in that sense. And that now that I'm a Christian, I have moral superiority, I have superior knowledge. I have I've suddenly gained the right to, have power over you, and you can run the, the colonization narratives that were, very prevalent.
But that sounds like a choice rather than, kind of an ascension to a belief.
Well, I think it comes with the package. I think that there's things in Christianity that you can take up and you can use for different ends and not just consolation.
Christianity does have to create a problem in order to provide the solution.
Right. And this is why they like their damnation narratives, right? You need something.
Well, they're damned without it.
Right.
So the work that a Christian has cut out for them is to make them unhappy.
This is Nietzsche's slave revolt of morality, right? This is the inversion that Christians have to do, right? They have to make the noble person, into the evil one. They have to make the virtues of the nobility what is bad, and what the weakness of the, the lambs that are getting eaten by the birds of prey is the good, right?
Yeah.
So they have to do that in order for their, for their system to work, their moral system to work.
Man, I've done a whole episode on that right there.
Oh yeah, the genealogy of morals.
Well, and just how Christianity flips morality on its head.
Yeah.
And it's good to be, or it's bad to be good. It's bad to be powerful. Like this is the critique of the Ubermensch thing.
Well, the point is, it's not that it's bad to be powerful, but it becomes evil.
Yeah.
You need to destroy that seed that's in there that's causing that. So it gets a little bit of a more vicious connotation than just
bad.
Oh, these are bad. Don't really care about them. I can ignore them. No. But no, they're the evil ones now because they're the ones who are hurting us, and we can't eat the cake anymore. So now they're bad, right?
Yeah. So what is the religious climate on the Vanderbilt campus? I mean,
that is something I've always been curious about. So it's kind of it's kind of obscured almost. So religion doesn't play very pronounced a role at Vanderbilt. You're not going to see, there's an apartment next to ours that displays a Christian flag, but that's about the only public display of faith that I've ever seen on campus.
Now, have you seen these guys walking around campus with the cross?
No, they don't do that. I haven't seen that.
No, they do it every day almost now. I mean, we're outside my window.
Oh, no.
No, there's like 6 or 7 people, and there's one person that's kind of leading the way, and he's holding up a cross. It's probably, it's about 8 foot pole.
That sounds pretty Catholic to me.
Yeah, it did look very Catholic, and I didn't know about that.
And they just walk around? Do they preach?
Yeah, they just walk around. I haven't been outside to hear
That's
them.
their morning stroll.
I think they're just praying.
Huh.
I think they're just praying. It's strange, but
getting some exercise.
Well, kind of. I would think most college campuses are more. They're more liberal because it's a place of inquiry and asking questions and learning, and that is counterintuitive to Christianity.
I think it's becoming less and less a place of inquiry. But I should say, in my curiosity, I wrote there was this app where you could poll. I think it's called What's Goodly or something like that, where you could poll people within an immediate vicinity, which is convenient on a campus because you're basically just polling students. And I gave 4 options on the poll, and it said, well, I'm devoutly religious, and religion is important in my daily life. I believe in God, but religion is not a part of my daily life. And then kind of going toward the end being like, I am certain that God does not exist or whatever, and it plays no role in I don't give it any regard. And I think it was about split between the number of people who, almost perfectly 50-50. I got 100 responses, and there were about as many people who were it didn't play a particular role in their lives as it did. But it's worth noting that, and this is kind of where it gets interesting, is more people were certain of God's existence than were uncertain. Most of the 50% who were not religious recognized that there was certainty in a sense was not compatible with how they believed.
Do you find that it's more likely for people that are in the fraternities and sororities to be Christian?
I would say they would be Christian in name only sort of ordeal. I don't think that I think they're too hungover to go to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Well, I mean,
I'm sure there are plenty, and there is a sort of Christian fraternity who are really nice to me at intramural sports, so I really like them. Bucks, brothers under Christ, they're really nice guys, but they hand out Capri Suns at their parties, so people apparently stop. But the thing I've noticed on Vandy is that the religious speech seems to be in this sort of category of protected speech, where you can say whatever you want under the banner of being from a religious organization, that if you were from a secular organization, you couldn't say. So I think that they have a more protected speech, and that's the one thing that sort of bothers me a little bit is, on move-in day, all the religious organizations can wear stickers saying, come join the Baptist Christian Ministry, come join University Catholic. And I was just wondering if we did a secular student thing like that, we probably would be politely told to take those off.
I don't think we would.
I think we would if we did sort of an aggressive sort of branding like they do with their cross.
We'll
and
put
stuff.
the head of Satan.
Yeah, why not? I've always thought that would be something fun to do, to test the boundary, right? Is this a uniquely protected speech? And I think if you did some sort of goat head or pentagram thing, I think it would be interesting to see what the reaction would be from the administration and just sort of other students.
Yeah,
but
probably awful. But the thing I would add on the Greek life front is that there is a certain demographic. There is a certain segregation on the campus. So people recognize that most kids involved with Greek life are Caucasian, they're mostly Southern, and they're mostly well-heeled. They were mostly, brought up in successful families. So if we're going to go back to what you said, saying that there is a certain flavor of religion that is, it comes with privilege, then I would say that there's, a higher quantity of belief.
Yeah. Well, and social categories are everywhere. I mean, they're really prevalent in high school because you got your jocks and you got your nerds and you got your geeks and you got your goth or whatever.
Stoners. That's one thing that kind of melts away in college. I'm talking about actual demographic segregation, which is, I don't know if that's a product of being where we are. It might just be because Vanderbilt has kind of artificially built up a diversity on campus that people kind of feel inherently uncomfortable mixing, and a lot of campus events are actually race specific, which is very bizarre.
Yeah,
right. A lot of campus events will not only. I'm sure you could show up if you weren't like-minded, but the event will be, African American specific or like gay specific or something like that, you know. And if you weren't sympathetic to either of those groups, it was like you don't belong there, basically.
Yeah, or why would I? If I'm not interested in either of those topics, and I don't go. I mean,
that'd be the argument for me. But I'm just saying that's why you see groups of exclusively one race people walking around, and it kind of fosters that.
Birds of a feather. I'm really struggling with that whole notion that like we hang out with not only like-minded but like-skinned and like orientation or whatever. I mean, we like to feel comfortable, and we feel most comfortable when we're around people with similar things. I mean, I don't know, it's common sense.
I sometimes wonder if we're going to evolve past that. I think that's something from caveman days where it was safer.
Yeah.
And it was safer, and you could immediately identify your pack. It's kind of like xenophobia. You don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
You said something similar on an episode a while back where the days of fight or flight.
Yeah.
That doesn't really.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been a police officer 10 years, and I rarely have to choose fight or flight.
Yeah.
So if I don't, as a police officer, that terribly often, then regular people walking down the street really don't have to.
They don't. You're a very evolved person, for one thing. But we are living in a time, I think the reason that even Trump is president, if you want to ask me, but I think we're living in a time when most people are unknowingly and unaware how driven and how controlled they are by their amygdala, as opposed to their prefrontal cortex. Like the reptilian brain, the fight or flight or freeze, they're constantly responding to that. And it has to do with the id and the ego, I'm sure. I don't know. But as opposed to just it being something that, like you said, it helped our species survive.
At a time.
At the time.
It means nothing.
But we don't live in a world where bears are behind the bushes or whatever. So I'm just saying, I think what we're both saying is that this obsession in America with guns, this obsession with fear of refugees, xenophobia, this fear of all of this stuff where we're acting like cowards. I think it's because of how motivated and driven and compelled most humans are, Americans.
By fear.
Yeah. But that's fed to us. It's fed to us through religion and through politics, and it's
enhanced,
it's a mechanism.
Yeah.
The media is definitely complicit. I mean, they were complicit in Trump. They were collaborators. It
goes back to the whole hell thing. You take hell away, and there's no religion. You have to. Fear is a good motivator.
Oh,
so
yeah.
if you can scare people into behaving the way you want them to, that's what you go for.
That's the thing. That's worth talking about. Actually, like I mentioned, I was raised Roman Catholic, and probably through the whole, I did the education. It wasn't probably as hardline as like Baptist, children's kind of catechism or whatever you call it.
Not catechism.
Not catechism.
Sunday school.
Sunday school. There you go. But we rarely, if ever, mentioned hell, and we certainly didn't. We certainly didn't describe it. There was no, sulfur and fire and brimstone or anything like that. But it still came to a point where I didn't feel like it had any value in my life. I don't think that it took long enough for me to abandon it because I was afraid of eternal consequence.
You're saying no to that? You weren't.
No, I think I came out of it before that even struck my mind.
Yeah.
I think the first time I remember actually doubting God, like doubting my beliefs, because I was fairly consistent Catholic or Christian, as we called it. I think
that's fine.
Went to church every Sunday, prayed every night, basically as devout as people in the North get, I should say.
Yeah. Which is where? Where are you from?
Jersey, North Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I first started thinking about it, that wasn't even on my mind. I think I was like 12 or 13.
What was it?
Sorry? Oh, what was on my mind?
Yeah, that made you doubt, the first time you doubted God.
Podcasts, media, stuff like that. I was kind of coming around to the age where, if you've heard about Piaget's, whatever they call it, stages of development.
Oh, okay.
I was coming around to that stage of, abstraction, like where I started even feeling motivated to think about things. And that's kind of what came about.
About what age?
12 or 13.
Yeah.
The only reason I can remember that is because I actually got confirmed as an atheist. I got confirmed to the guy I was standing there, and I'm like, I don't really want to be here, but I don't really want to make my parents miserable. You know, that was
how bad are they going to take it if and when you come out to them?
Probably not well.
Yeah.
Especially my mom. They were both, raised in Catholic education. They both attended Catholic universities, the same Catholic university, actually. Neither of them wound up graduating from that school, but they spent a decent amount of time there. So they were both fairly imbued.
When a Christian is disappointed in someone for not believing anymore, there's got to be several motivators going on. And we're talking about hell as far as now that person is afraid that you, their loved one, is going to be eternally separated from them. That's one thing. But let's say that hell is not a big deal to them, like it's not and wasn't to you. So one of the things that they could do was they could say God, or at least the Bible, or the Holy Spirit within you is the source of morality. And now I'm afraid that you're going to become a bad person. That could be another.
I don't think that's there.
Okay, so
I think maybe it's in terms of, you mentioned separation. It's not necessarily juxtaposing paradise and suffering. More just like separation, kind of not only ideological, exactly. Yeah. Not even not alone ideological separation, but actual physical, kind of corporeal separation.
As a Catholic, did you feel a lot of guilt though?
People always ask about the Catholic guilt.
It's
but I think
the confessions.
I think hell's more evangelical. That's more the focus there.
Definitely.
And I think Catholic is more mind your P's
it's
and
funny
Q's and feel bad about it if you don't.
Yeah.
Are there elements of reconciliation in Baptist faith or
No,
there are, but
Jesus
it's much more sort of abstracted away, and they have like the windshield wiper theory and things like that, where you don't necessarily have to like name your sins out like a Catholic would.
Because tomorrow's Easter, and Jesus rose from the dead and saved us from ourselves.
Right.
So,
well, in my experience in the 20, 30 years that I was a Christian, Paul did say, confess your sins to one another that you may be healed. There were attempts, at least on our part, as Protestants, to practice that, not with a priest. The big difference in the Protestantism that I was raised in, contrasted with Catholicism, is that all these intercessors, like Mary, and then Saint Patrick or Saint anybody, like these were all humans that were basically between me and God. And Protestantism was, you got a hotline to God, and that the only one interceding for you is Jesus.
Right.
And you are the adopted brother of Jesus, because you're now a son and a daughter. We didn't look to saints or even the pastor for that matter. We looked to each other. And so there were what we called accountability groups.
Okay.
Where if you
John's laughing. He's been to one.
I find the idea of like an accountability group is just sort of like, let's get together and just like basically shit on each other, right?
Or shit on ourselves in front of each other.
I just find that to be like masochistic in nature.
Well, I remember being in groups where I'd say, I masturbated 6 times this week or something, who knows. And it was like nobody else wanted to talk about it. I thought we were confessing our sins, and then it just left me out to dry.
You're like, come on, guys, that was an off week for me.
Anyway, so other than your twin brother, who's a believer, are you in personal friendships with Christians? And if so, how do you navigate that, or how do they navigate you?
I do have friendships with Christians. It doesn't really bother me. I grew up in the South from Western Kentucky, so you just sort of have to do it, right? It's inevitable. And I just really don't think that you need to make religion as a primary issue. I don't necessarily want to go out to people and be like waving like an atheist flag, trying to like start a war or anything, right? So I don't think that you need to necessarily be completely upfront and be like the r/atheist guy, right? So I think that's sort of like my first step. And then sort of if they want to bring it to me, I'm just ready to have sort of an honest conversation about it. And I think then that just throws the onus on them. I'm always open to having a discourse, having a line of argument. But I think at that point, if they want to be friendly towards me, that's their choice,
I'm just curious, how old are you two?
I'm 21.
I'm 21 too.
And you've both been atheists for how long?
I've been, let me see, math is hard. I'd say 6-7 years, maybe.
Okay, so
6 years.
And
Yeah,
yours was 8.
better part of a decade. Yeah, like 9 years.
So this is just much more natural to you guys. You didn't live a full life,
Right.
believing this way, making decisions accordingly, and then having
Right.
it all cave in.
Right.
Well, and the fact that it was so long ago, too, they're not angry, and they're not belittling of theists.
No.
That's
I
what
never was angry. That's why
I wasn't really angry either.
Yeah, that's why I did SSA. I tried to bring SSA back from the ashes, and why I want to come on podcasts like these and stuff and just kind of talk about air these things out. Is because I want to show that kind of separation, that kind of animosity that people think is there is not there at all. The same community. If anything, we would want to be one big community.
I think that's a millennial thing, though.
Is it?
Yeah,
Is it?
I think so.
And the fact that you were young when you deconverted. I was 39 when I began deconverting and deconstructing my faith. And so I had invested decades and tens of thousands of dollars in what turned out to be false.
Part of yourself is
Shamed.
is that,
Well,
right?
and
It is like the Christian self, and
Yeah.
you have to distancing yourself from that is not only hard, but I don't think it's even possible to fully distance yourself from that history, that
It's part of who I am now.
One of the things John had said a little bit ago was with the internet, how accessible everything is. It's much easier to learn things and to see things and to be diverse because I can find out anything I want to know in a device in my pocket. That was not the case when you and I were...
Especially in the South, when even getting access to academic materials in a library will be curated. You may not be able to find a book that is anti-theist in a library. Access is very, has been much more democratized, but there are pitfalls of that too, because no curation means you get all the bad stuff and the good stuff too. But it's definitely made it a lot easier too.
Well, one of the we're talking about relationships between atheists and theists. For me, is as an adult, I was like, oh God, I am so embarrassed that I ever believed this. And kind of shaming myself and feeling stupid and duped. And then to have those feelings and then to go say home to my mom or my sisters or whatever, and they all still believe it.
All right.
And so I'm over here going, I can't believe I used to believe this shit. I was so stupid. Oh, you still are stupid. I mean, that is like an elephant in the room for me.
Yeah, Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners are a little bit awkward for me because I've forgotten how to say grace or prayer.
And then they ask you to,
and then they might ask me to, and then I'll just pass it off to my brother. You take this one.
Rub a dub.
But if I were to say it, it would be I'd have to think at least a day in advance how to re-say a prayer, right?
Okay, that brings up something I read this week where a guy was asked at a gathering to pray. And I don't know if they said it as a trap knowing he was an atheist or if they just literally didn't know. It doesn't matter because he just did it. But what he did is he thanked all the people who harvested this food. He just literally went down the list of all the people that were involved to make this event possible, which is a really cool story in a way, and very human and very humanistic,
Yeah.
And I think it was really cool because they're never going to ask him again, for one. And it just he just kind of flipped it around to where I am a grateful person, and so let's say grace, let's give thanks, but let's give thanks where thanks is due.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just think. Say what you're grateful for.
Yeah, but a little bit of the lingo helps,
Yeah.
Just a little bit helps.
You remember enough to throw in a couple.
Right,
You got to shove it in there.
Just ETH on the end of a few words.
When you were talking at the very beginning, doing your little introduction, you had mentioned that you would like to work on dementia and Alzheimer's and doing gene therapy and those types of things.
Yeah.
One thing I've always thought was science has come so far and can do so many incredible things. To the point where we could clone people if we chose to. That goes to bioethics and whether or not we should, but I think we could. And I've always thought, ever since I've been paying attention and really looking at science and noticing science and seeing the things that it can do, if God is real and life is from Him and created by Him and a miracle, we shouldn't be able to do any of these things. You should, because the way we were brought up in religion is God made you, He knows the hairs on your head, He gave you blue eyes and black hair. everything you have is from him, and this is all special, and you're unique, and you're a unique child of God. Well, now we can change all of those things. We can choose through gene therapy what things are expressed and how this person is,
which you could view as
and so I was going to make a joke when you were talking. I was like, well, be careful not to play God. But if we're to the point where we can play God to that extent, there must not be any God, because it doesn't make sense. It shouldn't be possible. These things shouldn't be possible.
You could frame it as hubris. I mean, if you really were, you were really still trying to toe the line. But I understand.
Playing God should be impossible if God is real and he is who he says he is. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, like you said, they might just say, well, the more we unlock the code
should be unknowable to us.
Right, but for a theist who's doubled down and got, locked in, he's going to say the more beyond the veil, the more layers that we get down to, we're getting deeper and deeper into the glory and the complexity and the power of God. I mean, he's not going to hear.
If it's the power of God, we shouldn't have access to it, and we do.
Well, I don't know if this is part of like divine hiddenness, but one of the things that divine hiddenness says is that it pleased God to make it foolishness, and if you seek me, you will find me, the fact that, I mean, one of the critiques of Hitchens, was like, okay, humans have been around at minimal 100,000 years, probably more like 250,000 years, and all these years go by of suffering and babies dying, and just the life expectancy and germs and just everything, and then 200,000 years later, he decides to intervene. And where does he decide to do it? In a place where it doesn't have the alphabet,
most uneducated,
unlike the East. Yep. Uneducated, the only land in the Middle East that doesn't have oil or whatever. I mean, it's just like, and then doesn't explain germ theory, and doesn't. Well, the theist is going to say that God is revealing himself, like. So the more we discover, God decided to reveal it to us. I mean, I don't know.
But he allowed us to suffer in the meantime.
Yeah, it's not.
Life has never been more livable than it is now. It just gets better and better because of all the advancements,
technology.
But the AC in my car went out, and so I'm driving around in a hot car, and I'm like, God, this is miserable. That's just one little creature comfort that 100 years ago nobody had. Do you know how hard living must have been 100 years ago? Everybody says, oh, life is a gift from God and it's beautiful and he created all this for us. No, he didn't. The sun, the only natural light source we have, kills us. It gives us cancer and it burns our skin. Thanks for nothing. Thanks for that fantastic gift. Life, as it is naturally, is really hard and brutal.
Yeah.
And it's still hard and brutal even with all the advancements we've made.
Yeah.
To think that he made this for us is nuts.
Yeah.
There's ample evidence that that's not the case. There's been 5 mass extinctions in the history of life on Earth.
Yeah.
If that's his grand plan, is to create it and kill it over and over again.
Yeah. So what Mark is demonstrating here is a form of atheism that he used to be a theist, so it's not like he's this lifelong certainty, but he has done a lot of the work in his own mind to find the fallacies of these things.
Right.
One of which he just espoused. If you were to encounter, well, you just did. You just encountered an atheist like that. How does that make you feel? I mean, you guys seem to be softer atheists than Mark and I.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that the critique is valid. I think that this is,
Mark's.
Yeah, because, it's pointing to the fact that religion, particularly Christianity, is very anthropocentric, right? Mm-hmm. We take just humans as being the center of the universe, and we think everything is done for us. And then if you take one level up, go to the next objective level, you say, wait a minute, no, not really. And then sort of the sandcastle sort of gets washed away, right? But, if someone says, well, I'm not necessarily too concerned about that because, how did you get the dirt, in the lab to create the life to begin with, right? So there are theistic responses to this, and I'm just more, willing to embrace sort of, that there is this tension between them. And then, I think the discussion is productive, and I'm not necessarily going to say that, oh no, the Christian's super bad or super wrong for, not seeing the validity and soundness of this argument, even though I do prefer, my one side. So that's sort of where the softerness sort of gets cashed out. Is not that I'm, am less principled in my opinion, but I like to, have a discussion, see sort of let the tensions play out, because I think that's how we come to bigger and better understanding, right? Mm-hmm.
And maybe maintain the relationship at the end of the conversation.
Right.
Because people are more important than beliefs or ideologies or something. I don't know.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any thoughts, Stephen?
I concur. No, I think yeah, as long as you kind of have an accompanying kind of ideological force, like yeah, you can say, you know, this world is you know, life is struggle. This world is completely unamenable not only to humans but to, you know, everything around us. It's just a complete kind of clusterfuck.
The universe doesn't know or care that you're here, and it's out to kill you.
Right. Yeah.
Like that. But that's even
It's not even
personifying
out
the universe.
to kill you. It just happens naturally.
Yeah.
It's just
We just personify everything.
you see big storms roll through, and it just wipes out everything. And
I feel like that argument has a name. The argument, you know, saying that, you know, because the world is so inhospitable, it couldn't have been designed by an all-knowing God.
This is like the problem of evil, right?
Yeah, kind of like
it's
that.
a permutation on the problem of evil.
Right, the Odyssey.
Except
Yeah, I was
you're
gonna say
running,
the Odyssey.
except instead of moral evils, you're running it with natural evils.
Perfect. See, that's why he's here.
The problem of evil is really interesting, but it gets very boring because you can keep going in the same circles over and over again, and after you've like gone through 3 or 4 levels of it, it's just the same thing over and over again. So that's why I no longer do much philosophy of religion, because once you've heard it like for the 10th time, you're just kind of done with it.
Yeah.
You know, it gets boring.
Yeah. What is that? I mean, even Paul said to avoid idle arguments. And
Right.
I always thought that was pretty good advice, because like if your car is idling, it's on and it's revving, but it's not going anywhere.
I mean, with the problem of evil, you're eventually just going to reach a place where one person says A, the other person says B, and they just say they just shout A, B, 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 and that's going to be it, right?
Yeah.
But the sort of novel thing I've heard about these arguments is there are actually some scholars, I forget his name, a Jewish scholar, who is to solve the problem, you eliminate some of the qualities of the traditional God, right? So you take out a little bit of omnipotence, right?
Okay.
And that's how you can sort of start to solve it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But there's currently a push to liberalize these things more,
Oh,
and
yeah.
sort of like rethink,
You have
the
to.
traditional conception of God, and I think that can be sort of interesting. You know, I think that would be a more pertinent question than whether you believe in God or not, but sort of what is a deity, right? I think that's a more interesting question that I think religious people should ask, and people who are trying to deconvert should
That
ask.
was, I mean, that was the takeaway I had from, I took philosophy of religion with John and kind of came at it with a naturalistic perspective rather than a philosophical one, as much as I tried. And that was kind of the one takeaway for me.
And that to me sounds futile, because whenever somebody says, all right, so we're done with the A, B, B, thing, and they throw in a C, and they say, well, God is actually not omnipotent, doesn't know the future, and he's in the suffering with us, and,
yeah, stuff like that.
Stuff like that. And I'm worn out by that, because it's just how much, when somebody's about to die or they're very sick, they sign a DNR, do not resuscitate.
Right.
I want God to sign a goddamn DNR so that we quit resuscitating him. I mean, like when we've killed him, let him die. No, I mean, now we're deconstructing him. We're changing what it means to be a deity. I don't know which one of you just said that, but now we're taking away his omnipotence, because it is true that if you are all powerful, it's one of these famous quotes by Epicurus. Read that one right there. It says Epicurus.
Oh, it's the riddle of Epicurus. Is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. Is he able but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then whence cometh evil? Is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God?
Yeah. So that's where, when people start allowing God they start taking away his some of these divine attributes of omniscience and omnipotency, and et cetera, then you really are just left with what you've always had, which is a figment of your imagination. It's something that you've needed to be true, and it's now so malleable and almost vaporous that it's just going to poof. It's just going to disappear, and you're not back, but you're here.
Meanwhile, evangelicals say he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. No, he's not. He changes with every social movement that's ever happened.
Or every person.
Yeah.
Like no two people believe the same things. And so anyway,
because no two people are the same.
I do find rest in atheism. And I think that's what I was always looking for. I felt like the gerbil wheel or the treadmill.
It's a Christopher Hitchens quote yet again. It's the state where you have the least cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Everything makes sense. I don't scratch my head.
I wouldn't go so far as to say everything makes sense, but
not everything. There's still things we don't know. But as far as the question of evil and why do good things happen or bad things happen to good people and all those types of things, it's the explanation that makes the most sense.
Right. I would also say, number one, it takes away the gravitas of whether you're right or wrong about that. Mm-hmm. Like when heaven and hell are just gone, mm-hmm. you talk about enter into your rest. Like you can breathe a great sigh of relief.
It's okay to be wrong.
It's okay to to not know.
Yeah. And going back to some of our stuff about when we were talking about fear, right? Fear always has to have like a determinate object. It always has to have that preposition. So then once you get rid of the place that you're afraid of, the fear sort of goes away with it.
Right.
Because like the sentiment of the feeling, the affect of fear makes no sense if there's nothing to be afraid of.
We were talking about consolation earlier. Everything that I needed to be consoled about vanished when I became an atheist. Religion consoled something in me that was created by religion. Huh. And the second that was gone, I no longer needed consolation.
Yeah, going back to that word consolation. Yeah. So when you were talking, John, I had this picture of like a prostitute or a bunch of them, working for a pimp, and he holds over them, some form of control. Like, I'll either beat you up if you don't work for me, or I'll turn you out. I'll throw you out on the curb, and you'll be on your own or whatever. And then when you do realize, when the hooker realizes that you call his bluff or whatever, then you really are a free person. Yeah. And that is one of the elations that I experienced coming out from theism to atheism is freedom, and the stakes are gone as far as being right or wrong. I don't know, just be. Which is very Buddha, like Zen, as far as, and Buddhism is an atheism in a way. There is no gods. I've really embraced, I'm just lucky to be conscious.
So if you, in a sense, are you saying that if you, chipped away at your faith completely until you got it down to like its most rudimentary kind of element, that it would be that kind of pimp prostitute relationship, like a kind of despotic?
Back when I was a theist?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm saying that when God or the dogma itself has over you a need to be right with God, not just for judgment in the afterlife, but even if we're talking about prosperity, kind of going back to like, I need the favor of God. I need to know that the hand of God is on my life. Because when you're a Christian, you believe that your obedience to God in behavior and attitude and thought police, like just like not even lusting after a woman or whatever, when you're righteous and you've worked hard to be a good boy, girl, child of God, and daddy's pleased, then he is going to prosper you. He's going to protect you from Satan. He's going to protect you from disease. He's going to protect you from financial difficulties. He is going to guide your life. And it has everything to do with being in alignment with his will for your life, which is ambiguous. I mean, other than just these 10 commandments and stuff, but it's like, what do you want me to do, God? Well, I want you to go to Uganda. Or wait, I meant Uruguay. I'm just saying that, like, you're like, here am I, send me. What do you want to do with me? I'm not my own. There's a condemnation in the scriptures for making plans.
A little bit.
Jesus said
you're supposed to be led by the Spirit.
Well, right. Jesus said, "Take no thought for the morrow." And the birds of the field, and they trust God for their next meal.
Right.
Then there's also a place, I think it's in the book of James, that we are not like those who say, "Tomorrow we will go do this, and tomorrow we will go do that." No, we literally,
if the Lord wills it, right?
Yeah, if the Lord wills it, and just a complete banishment of agency. You're just turned over to God. And what I'm saying is all of this is driven by the need and desire to think about this. I don't know how much this is Protestant guilt, which is ironic because we talk about Jewish guilt and Catholic guilt, but I think those are all Bible religions. But I think Protestant Christianity is the worst, and that is, I've heard 1,000 sermons. Jesus hung on a cross and stayed there. He could have just waved his hand and killed all those Roman soldiers. He's God. He's God incarnate. He stayed there, and of course, even when the Passion of the Christ came out, and he's being lashed, and his back is being ripped by the cat of nine tails or whatever. All of those lashes, at any point, he could say, nope, I'm done, motherfuckers, boom, it's over. But he took it because his punishment was the reconciliation of me to God the Father. God's wrath.
We did it to him.
That's some, like, whenever you would sin, you could like, wow, I literally just nailed a nail. I hammered a nail into Jesus' hand all over again. And these are the kind of guilt trips that preachers would put you on, as far as wanting you to not sin. The sigh of relief that I'm talking about is I'm out from underneath the tyranny of a celestial Kim Jong-un.
Yep.
Be interested to know what you would say about sort of the more liberal churches, or sort of, churches that are sort of getting away from the sort of guilt on purpose to sort of make it more about the sense of community and about, sort of the service things that they do for the community.
Oh, I have tons. Well, I got my master's in divinity from Vanderbilt, and so
very liberal place.
All of my peers there were progressive Methodists, progressive United Church of Christ, UCC, one of the most progressive denominations that can still be considered Christian. They don't believe in substitutionary atonement. They don't believe in hell. They're LGBT affirming. They themselves are LGBT. I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, again, there was a part of me several times where I'd be sitting in class, and I know this has been said before by anti-theists, but like, so you got this building where this is the mathematics department. You got engineering, you got business, you got law, you got medical, philosophy even. And then there's this building where we're studying something that doesn't exist. I mean, now the anthropology of religion and religious studies,
that's a different story.
Just understanding why humans did this, that's fascinating.
True.
But to gather around a laboratory and put under a microscope nothing, a non-existent thing, and all these scientists gather around going, what do you see? What do you see? What do you see?
Just have faith.
No, they're going to come up with stuff. Because I don't know.
Well,
that's futile.
That's what I was going to say to the whole liberal Christian thing is I don't see what the point is, because you can have community, you can do all those things without a belief in something that has no evidence.
Right.
So I just don't see what the point in keeping God. And it's like what you said earlier. Why do we keep resurrecting him? Just I don't see any reason to believe.
Another sort of question I've always sort of had, especially with the more liberal flares who aren't necessarily like to the book, to the letter, is, why not just create your own? Like, why do you still need to have this historical baggage with you? If there are so many, to use a word that's now like said too often, if there's so much problematic baggage with the Bible, why do you still have it and not just write a new canon? If you still want to have a divine being, write in the God of the philosophers in, and then just run with it and write your new commandments. I don't understand what is the motivation to keep this around.
Well, I can tell you what comes to mind. This is Easter weekend right now as we're taping this. We've all seen a lot of stuff on social media about Easter, and I have a few friends left on my Facebook that are Christian that somehow stuck around, and I respect them, they respect me. But there was one particular guy who was quoting basically the story, maybe even the Last Supper, and he took the bread and broke it and said, "This is my body broken for you," or whatever. I think one of the answers to your questions, John, is that the reason that people don't rewrite their own religion, for one thing, that's a lot of work. But number two, even though the Bible is riddled with stuff that is embarrassing to any person with integrity, there's at least fodder in there to say, let's take this moment where Jesus is at the table with his followers and he says this or that, and exegete that and build. It's a narrative. It's a story that's fairly decent. And if I think I've said many times before, I think that the Garden of Eden story, at least one of them, the one where we were naked and unashamed, we had the option to choose life or judgment, or at least knowledge of good and evil. And so these are the glasses we can put on, where we're going to put on glasses, and now everything we see, we just automatically, binarily judge as good or evil, including myself, because now I have a fig leaf because I'm embarrassed even of my own self, and it just ruined everything. Judgment ruins everything. And so the fact that the serpent said, or God said, if you eat this, you will die. I kind of get that. I think that if you live your life having ingested the knowledge of good and evil, which makes you a judgmental ass, then it killed your life. Your life sucks. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you had eaten of the tree of life, and you can just fill in whatever you want that to mean almost, as far as non-judgment. Anyway, the reason that these old stories survive, and we keep going back to them, is because they exist. In that Aesop's fables exist. Now, nobody's built a religion around them, but there's morals to stories, no matter what they are. Little Red Riding Hood has a moral.
Sure.
I don't know. That's what comes to mind. Why these traditions stick around. All right, well, let's do this. What's one of your pet peeves, both of you?
Okay. I have a separate YouTube account and Google account, all right?
Right.
This has been aggravating me forever, okay? Especially because I have a Vandy-connected Gmail account.
Yeah.
So in order to go to my email, I have to log out of one account and switch to another, right? This is what I have to do. But when Google introduced this new feature of where you can add accounts, so you can have like a list of all your different email accounts, and my YouTube account is one. And so you click on that, then you click the button and you're good, you're set, right? Well, if I'm logged in previously to my Vandy email, it won't work. But if I'm in the YouTube account email, it will work. So it's this weird situation where sometimes it will randomly go through the easy workflow. Otherwise, I have to refresh the page I have to do 4 extra button clicks. And that just aggravates me. Bad UI design. That's my pet peeve.
Got it.
Ants.
Okay, I like the ants.
This is a story worth
like
telling.
the ants.
So John and I live in an apartment, but we live in the same bedroom. And probably about 5 or 6 times we've had these massive ant infestations come into our room.
In the kitchen?
No, in our bedroom.
Bedroom, yeah.
The kitchen is spotless. Never, nary an insect in sight in the kitchen. But for whatever reason, we don't leave food out. There's nothing even slightly tempting. And we get these huge, just like ant, like parades, just like going across our room when we come back from class, and they're all there. It's like they know when we're gone, and they all just kind of like, yeah.
And when we wake up in the morning, just like ants all over. First thing you wake up, ants.
Ridiculous. So we took care of them ourselves by spraying vinegar everywhere because the university kind of belayed that and didn't wind up coming for a very long time.
Did the vinegar work?
It does work.
It does work.
And it keeps
Put it
away?
in paper towels around the cracks.
And nothing since you put that there?
No ants come to it.
It's an old housewives trick.
Have you ever philosophized about the meaninglessness of ants?
They work awfully hard. There's some meaning going on there.
And they also change their tactics depending on what we did. So like they're a little bit intelligent.
I'm saying they're meaningless to us, but obviously to them.
They got a lot going on.
Right? But without a prefrontal cortex, they don't know that they have a lot going on. I don't know. I mean, in what purpose? Like, again, when as a meaning-making human, I'm just like...
Well, there's some current thoughts about what's called, like, emergent properties, and if there could be, like, a collective consciousness or, like, a hive mind, right? So, like, the ants sort of operate together in sort of, like, one collective body, and so through each of their individual parts, they can have, like, sort of a collective emergent consciousness that does have, like, a meaning to, like, colonize different areas, gain access to food, feed the queen. So I think that they could have meaning, but it's not at the individual level. It's more like on another level, maybe.
They certainly have intelligence, if not meaning. I think people screw up, with as far as intellect is concerned. Like every creature on Earth is, fantastically well adapted to its environment, and in that sense, you could say they're intelligent. And whether you ascribe meaning to that, yeah, we'll just stomp on them and spray them with vinegar. But I think they still have, that intellect, and you can still be humbled by how, like you said, just how kind of like coordinated they are.
Yeah. Have you ever? I'm a big fan of Ernest Becker's The Denial of Death, and how it how the fear of death drives humans to do a lot of things. But one of the things that is haunting, I think, about for us humans, especially outside of theism, if you take away all the theistic narratives that give our lives real special meanings, like he was saying, anthropocentric, where I'm the center of God's attention, that when and if we do either intentionally or accidentally kill an animal, whether a bird flies into your picture window in your living room, or bugs hit your windshield in the car, or you're killing ants in your bedroom, or you just accidentally step on or purposely step on a spider in your house, and how we don't give a second thought to the fact that, like, the babies of that bird are going to miss their mommy. Like the nest is, they're waiting for that bird to come back. We don't have any sympathy whatsoever for this. Their life is snuffed out without any consequences emotionally. And the reason I think that we even do, we aggrandize funerals, or the pomp and circumstances of making things matter and a big deal, as opposed to just squish.
Right. That's true.
Is driven by our need to feel superior to ants, partially. Never. I recommend the book. It's an interesting read. He himself, it's a Pulitzer-winning book, but he himself died before his theories could be proven, and so most of psychology and everything, they just wrote him off because he couldn't prove it. Well, there's a couple of social psychologists that came along and proved it, and Sheldon Solomon is one of them. He wrote a book called The Worm at the Core, and it's a follow-up to Ernest Becker's book. Anyway, what do you guys do for fun?
Oh, that's a good one. I like to kind of get out as much as possible.
And what does that look like?
I don't know, just walking around town, visiting Centennial Park, Shelby Park or whatever that one's called. Watching all manner of, binge watching all manner of like Netflix.
Yeah, the Vandy recently gave us free HBO Go, and so it's just like destroyed our productivity.
Are you guys roommates?
Yes, we are. Yeah. HBO Go and Cinemax. We don't look at Cinemax for some particular reasons. But,
so what did you binge watch recently?
So right now I'm on The Man in the High Castle. It's an alternate history kind of saga about
about World War II.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
So I think they're in like the early 1960s, and there are a bunch of.
But America's a colony of Germany at that point,
more or less, like a protectorate.
Did you see it, John?
I watched a few episodes, but I just couldn't get into it because it's like the CGI is just bad, and that just like breaks my suspension of disbelief.
What else? Binge.
I just finished Boardwalk Empire for the first time, and then I was like, well, now I have to rewatch The Sopranos, right? You have to watch the best. So I'm on like season 5 now
of The Sopranos.
Yeah. So I'm rewatching that, and it's been great. I really like sort of like the way the family dynamics work. I think it's just hilarious to watch the catastrophe.
See, I've never done The Sopranos.
No, I haven't watched that.
Oh, you should. It's so good.
I know.
The acting's really good too.
It's fantastic.
You probably pushed me over the edge because I'm a huge fan of Mark Maron and his podcast, and he praises it.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody loves it, so it must be good.
Yeah.
There's also some religious overtones because, especially in the earlier seasons, the wife is a really devout Catholic, and he's like a Catholic in name only, but he's also the mob boss, you know? So he's not really, there's like some conflict there and some interesting religious themes about that.
Yeah. What about hardest time you ever laughed? That's a Pete Holmes question.
Mine would be when I watched the video Let's Paint, Exercise, and Mix Drinks. You should watch it. It's this guy on a treadmill who's mixing drinks and trying to do a painting at the same time. It's got the worst editing.
Yeah, whilst like power walking on a treadmill. It's fantastic. And he leaves a number on the bottom of the video and you can call in.
And he still does a live show, so if you want to call him in.
Harass him.
Yeah, it's great.
It's on YouTube?
Yeah.
Let's Paint?
Yeah, let's paint, exercise, and mix drinks.
Okay.
At the same time.
All right. I'll have to check that out.
I absolutely cannot get enough of C-SPAN callers. Have you ever seen this?
Yeah.
Those are great.
Oh my goodness. C-SPAN, honestly, I don't know why they don't work on a delay, because they really need to. They'll just have some really mundane question out on there, and they'll have like one, pseudo expert on the panel who's giving answers, and people will just, call the line and say like some really explicit shit, and then they'll have to cut them off as quickly as possible. And like at some point, Howard Stern
he's big on that.
Yeah, he encouraged all of his listeners to go and harass C-SPAN, and it's just, I think a 10-minute video, I'll be laughing for the full 10 minutes and probably 5 minutes afterward.
So is this literally on C-SPAN, or somebody made a compilation video of bad calls that you're watching?
It's a compilation video, but they're often like several in succession.
Yeah.
Which
it happens enough that if you watch C-SPAN, you'll catch several.
You'll catch them.
Yeah.
All right.
Just live. Yeah, it's good.
So that's two things I got to go watch now.
Oh, for sure.
If I'm going to be as cool as John and Steve, Vanderbilt seniors.
We have enough time to do stuff like that while being just as productive as any senior would be.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks, guys. I don't know. You have anything else you felt like you need to say?
Kind of just wanted to be a dialogue. I think we did pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good luck with your, congrats on graduation.
When's graduation? What's the day?
May 15th.
Wow.
What a relief.
A month from today.
Mark the calendar.
1 month.
Do you think he'll go on and get graduate school sometime, or?
Not immediately. John's
I'll have to, because he's talking
is.
about rocking a hard place with his major. Like, you can't get any job with a philosophy BA, period.
Right.
So I have to go on.
Yeah.
And I'm just tired of undergraduate work. So graduation isn't like celebratory for me. It's just like relief.
Mm-hmm.
You think it would get more interesting as it went on, but it's just gotten increasingly mundane.
Right.
As I'm just ready to like start working. I start work on like June 15th. So.
Where'd you get a job?
At the NIH. So I'm going to be doing some intramural.
What city?
Baltimore.
Okay.
Maryland.
Yeah.
Their main complex is in Bethesda.
What is the NIH?
The National Institutes of Health.
Okay.
So I'm going to be working there with the Bohr group, and they study neurodegeneration.
Oh. Wow.
Cool.
I didn't realize you actually had a job already.
Yeah, well, it's a 2-year commitment, so it's not like a full-time work till I die. But during that period, most of the students who receive the award are just trying to work out grad school.
Right. You mentioned the award. Okay.
It's kind of like a segue to grad school, so I'll probably wind up doing a master's or something in biotech.
Cool. Well, good luck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Good
guys.
to go.
So Stephen Lee
and John Roso.
John is the philosopher.
Correct.
Stephen is the biomed, or
yeah. But yeah, I was talking to him a lot on the drive here, and it's just interesting. That's why I asked how old they were, because their experience in deconversion is so it's almost
it's apples and oranges, really.
Yeah, and there's no comparison, and their whole you really have no memories until you're 3 or 4. Mm-hmm. And then they were deconverted by 13 or 14.
Mm-hmm.
So those years in between are so meaningless as far as the rest of your life is concerned.
Yeah, and then and nobody at that age really throws their whole heart into anything. I mean,
their religiosity was of no consequence.
Yeah.
It'll have no lasting impact on their lives.
Yeah.
So
they didn't have a car, so I reached out to you and said, "Hey, do you mind driving these guys down here?" So that's the circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
And I do imagine that in the car, I mean, too bad we didn't have a recorder going on in there, right? Cause,
it's a long enough drive.
Yeah.
You get a lot of talking.
But they're sharp guys.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And good. They asked me on the way here what I got my degree in, and it's embarrassing because it's communication. It's hardly...
It's not embarrassing.
But, engineering and philosophy, that's... I think John is... I told him this on the way here. He's very much an old soul.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be a good professor. He already looks like one.
Yeah.
So
I was a little surprised. I mean, 21. That's young.
Oh yeah.
And yet I don't know, they just seem to, they have a head start on me when I was 21.
For sure. Absolutely.
They're not even, I wasn't even anywhere close to as mature, as self-aware, as contextually aware. Like, I'm aware of what's going on in the world. I mean, as a Christian, you didn't really care what was going on. God's in control.
Yeah, you don't pay attention to those things. You purposely don't. It's bad to pay attention to anything that isn't biblical and church related.
Now, that's me. That's me in my practice, and it sounds like you too. I did have friends that were avid newspaper readers. They stayed up on things, and they were, you know, there are worse and better ways to practice Christianity, and I didn't do it very good.
Yeah,
I took on one that was a really foolish.
So
version.
did I. Yeah. I think too, it's with the internet and everything, it's just easier to be knowledgeable now.
Yeah,
and they've never known life without the internet. Part of the reason why they probably deconverted so quickly and so easily is there's just so much information.
Yeah.
And that's why I said a lot of these distinctions are just because they're millennials.
Yeah. I totally.
And that's why millennials en masse they're more accepting. They don't have an issue with gay people. They don't have any of the hangups that you and I grew up with because information is just at your fingertips all of the time. And that's a good thing.
I think so.
Information is good. Knowledge is good.
It's the end. So John's kind of working on community building and things via technology and social media and stuff. One of the downfalls, or at least we're saying that the destructive forces of the internet is destroying ignorance. And but what the positive is, and of course we think that's positive too. But I'm just saying, on a non-destructive way, it can be a way to build community. Now, some would say it also has hurt community
because you're never face to face. You're always and you have community with people you don't even actually truly know. Really, you don't know them in person at least. But yeah, they're very interesting guys for sure, and I'm jealous. I wish I loved college. I loved it. I would love to go back and be in a place where you could actually study and do those things,
and you could allow yourself to think.
Yeah,
if the Mark that you are now would go back.
Oh, it'd be totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would be a great experience.
Yeah. It's a shame I went through college as a Christian. I would have done much better, been much more interested, probably have picked a better major, and
yeah, because you'd be more self-aware and you'd be more curious, all the things that kind of are taken away by.
Well, and I was so, one of the reasons I just did the bachelor's and then was done is because I very much was of the mind frame that I need to get married and start having kids because I can't have sex if I don't get married.
Right.
And that's just what Christians do. They have families. That's the pinnacle of success. So that's what I thought was expected of me. That's what I thought I needed to do. So that's what I went and did. And one of the reasons why they're so laid back and relaxed and all of those types of things is religion really never had a bad impact on their life.
Right.
They didn't build this entire life around it and then have it come crumbling down.
Right.
Of course they're going to be more at ease.
You just mentioned one front. I mean, you mentioned several, but if we just took one front as far as one topic where Christianity made us behave strangely, especially in contrast to how millennials behave now, and that they would look at it and go, oh, that's weird. Why would you do that? And that is sex before marriage, and how much the human anatomy and physiology wants it, needs it, just and the drive to do it, and all of this energy around not doing it, stopping and protecting yourself, and then eventually getting to the point where we have to get married. It's not fair to ask the human to abstain.
No, it's we're hardwired to do it.
And so we started getting that craziness.
Yeah.
To where it's like, we got to get married.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to several people who it was at least one of the, impetus to make them get married in the time that they did was the desire to have sex that was appropriate in the eyes of God.
Because of the guilt. You don't want to be guilt-ridden over it, but yet you're driven to do it.
Yeah. And millennials would look at us and go, what?
Even Christian millennials, a lot of them actually.
Yeah, they were like, yeah.
Because as we said before, God just keeps changing. In the 50s, there's that stuff in Timothy about women are to be silent in church, and they're not to be leaders. And in the 50s, that's absolutely the case, that women were not leaders in church. Well, then all of a sudden the women's movement happens, and suddenly God morphs yet again, and now women can be leaders. Well, that's happening in a lot of different areas. And one of them is with sex and the way that it's viewed. It's just, there's just more information, and Christians are allowing themselves to do. The Christians who, and I love them, but Christians who are LGBT affirming are absolutely going against the Bible. But you can now, because we've evolved. Society's evolved, so now it's okay.
Well, and there's a lot of people that are hurt by the religion while we wait for it to catch up with common sense, to, with where we are now.
Yeah.
And so for some reason, we cut it a lot of slack. We give it a lot of grace. Oh, bless its heart. Yeah. It's evolving. Well, people's lives are fucked up by it in the meantime. It's
evolving too slow, but millennials are helping. That's a good generation. It's changing. And then we were saying, why do we keep resurrecting, God? Why do we keep holding on to this narrative? Well, we have, but it's becoming less and less. And I think there is a time where it's gonna get let go. So that'll be a good time.
Knock on wood.
Yeah. Hopefully, I'm here to see it.
Yeah. That would be soon.
Yeah.
Because how old are you?
40.
I'm 51.
Yeah.
We're already seeing a lot. It's great to watch.
Yeah.
I was telling Bob, we've got people. I mean, in some ways, Bob and I have outgrown the show. I don't even listen to shows as much as I used to. I used to listen to other podcasts that were very similar to mine. I only listen to mine because I have to.
Yeah.
Because I'm 10 years out of like deconverting and stuff. And so people are going to wean themselves of this show.
Yeah.
And new ones will come along where they just started their deconversion, and they find this show really encouraging.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. We'll keep doing it. But it's nice to know that it will be a good day when nobody needs this show.
Exactly. Which is the point of the show. It's to get to a point where it's obsolete.
Yeah, we really are trying to work ourselves out of a job.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for filling in today, man.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. I really
and driving them up from Vanderbilt.
And the least I can do.
Awesome.
Yep. Thank you, Cass.